Welcome back, Capital F football fans, to the O&O Sports YouTube channel. Today, we are looking at conference championships. Who's going to win each Power 4 conference? Who is going to lock in a spot to the playoff? We will find out. But first, as always, be sure to like and subscribe if you do enjoy the video. And be sure to hit the other O&O Sports social media accounts to be entered into the 75 or die giveaway. Now, spoiler alert, we still have this week and the Army-Navy game in terms of predictions. But if I get every single one of those games correctly, I still will not go over 75%. I'll be just under at 74.8, which is good news for you because that means if you go down, follow, like, subscribe on this channel, like this video, you will have a chance at $100 this Christmas. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into these matchups, starting with the Big 12. It is a rematch between the Texas Tech Red Raiders and the BYU Cougars. BYU is a 13.5 point favorite, which means FanDuel has Texas Tech winning at about 32-18. And like I said, this is a rematch, the first of many rematches this week, might I add. But in the last matchup, Texas Tech dominated BYU from start to finish. The Red Raiders won that matchup 29-7, but that was a home game, so maybe this one will be a little more hostile for the Red Raiders in Arlington rather than in Lubbock. And once again in this matchup, Texas Tech will look to do what they did best, which was stopping the BYU rushing attack and forcing Bear Backmeyer to pass. Last time, BYU rushed the ball 27 times for a total of 67 yards. Texas Tech was able to essentially remove that part of the game completely for BYU, which is their strongest aspect of that offense. And when they forced Bear to pass, he went 23 of 38 for 188 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. So the blueprint for Texas Tech is there, like I said, stopping the run, forcing Bear Backmeyer to pass. But what about BYU? Can they win this matchup? And the answer is yes. Yes, obviously they can. And for them, it begins and ends with stopping the run. Last time, Texas Tech's running backs Dickey and Williams combined for nearly 200 rushing yards on the day. And to make a long story short, they have to just sell out for the run, force Baron Morton to pass. Now, Baron Morton isn't a bad quarterback at all. He is very, very solid, but he's also not elite. So in order to have the best odds for them to win this matchup, you're going to have to sell out to stop the run, try and get pressure on Baron Morton to force him off his game. And if you do, you stand a much better chance. But even if you don't, yes, Texas Tech does have elite talent on the edge. But since Texas Tech has shown the ability to run the ball over you essentially at will, like they did in the last matchup, I would much rather have Baron Morton airing it out and forcing him to throw in this matchup than letting them run all over you again in this one. So like I said, get pressure on him, force mistakes, hope that he turns the ball over at least one time when rushing him. And most importantly for BYU, do not turn it over yourself. Last time BYU had 3 total turnovers to Texas Tech's 0. Now that is a tall order to ask for considering how elite this Texas Tech defense has been, but if you want to win this game, you simply cannot turn the ball over 3 times. But when all is said and done, I do absolutely trust Texas Tech's defense a lot more than I do BYU's. I think this is an excellent matchup for Texas Tech, and I have the Red Raiders winning this matchup 34-17. And next, jumping to the SEC, it is Alabama versus Georgia. Georgia is a 2.5 point favorite in Atlanta in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, ironically where they played against Georgia Tech last week. And that means FanDuel has Georgia winning 24-23, and this is another rematch coming into this week. Last time, Alabama was able to beat Georgia in Athens 24-21 without scoring a single point in the second half, might I add. But from that matchup early on in the season, these two teams could not feel more different from where they were when they last met. Georgia's offense, of course, has been elite this year, but the defense has been coming into its own as of late. They allow just 12.5 points per game in their last 5 matchups this year. And on the opposite side, Alabama seems to have been figured out to a moderate degree. This year, Oklahoma beat them just a few weeks ago by forcing turnovers and stopping the run. And Alabama hasn't been good in general at running at all this year. They averaged just 3.5 yards per carry, which is 115th in the country. So, like I said, not very good at running the ball. And while Ty Simpson looked amazing to start the year, he's kind of been falling off the past few weeks a decent bit. In his last 3 games, he completed 58 passes on 93 attempts for 600 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions with just a 124 passer efficiency rating. Very, very pedestrian numbers to say the least, but there is yet hope for Mr. Simpson. And that hope is that Georgia doesn't get to quarterbacks that often. They are 122nd in sack percentage this year, just 3.9% of snaps where they get a sack on defense. And they do get pressure to a decent extent on quarterbacks, but don't get home, obviously. And a lot of it is due to that secondary. But like last time, I expect Alabama's elite offensive line to give Ty Simpson time to throw the ball. And on top of that, Alabama still has an elite wide receiver room. I know Ryan Williams hasn't really shown up the past few weeks, but there's still a ton of talent in that room. And at some point, they're going to be able to get open. Ty Simpson's going to be able to hit them on a big play down the field. In my opinion, it is a matter of when, not if, in terms of that happening. But my biggest question for this matchup is, will Georgia be able to adapt? Which sounds funny when talking about a Kirby Smart-led football team. But last game, they ran the ball well, which they've been doing all year. But they were forced off the field due to very inconsistent play on 3rd and 4th down. So will they be able to make the bigger plays? And will Gunnar Stockton be able to make some elite plays on those downs to keep Georgia on the field and keep their offense working? And my answer to that question is probably not. Alabama's defense is still elite, still one of the best defenses in the SEC and probably in the country. And I do like Gunnar Stockton a lot. I think he could have a big impact on this game. But still, Alabama's defense should be able to force a similar outcome on late downs like they did in their previous matchup. And with that, I have Alabama once again beating Georgia, this time in Atlanta, 27-24. And next, we have to jump to the ACC to look at Virginia versus Duke. Duke is just a 3.5 point favorite versus 16th ranked Virginia, which means FanDuel has Virginia winning at about 31-28. This is yet another rematch in this video, and it's a battle of who wants to lose less. And for Duke, if they're able to win this matchup, that forces the committee into the biggest disaster scenario they may have seen since the playoffs were introduced, in that I just think there's no way they can put an 8-5 ACC champion Duke over 2 12-1 group of 5 teams, either in James Madison, North Texas, or an 11-2 Tulane. There is a real scenario we could see 2 G5 teams in over the ACC champion, which would be absolutely hysterical in my opinion. The ACC has been a real crapshoot this year, and you can tell by just who's in this game. I mean, Virginia has been solid all year, don't get me wrong, but Duke, they're 7-5. They have a chance to go 7-7 this year if they lose in this game and then lose in the bowl game, which is very, very rare to say the least. But with that out of the way, let's just get into this matchup. Last time these two played, Virginia dominated 34-17. They were able to keep the ball away from Duke's explosive offense, and they held them to just 42 yards on 23 carries on the ground, and they sacked Darian Mensah 4 times in that matchup. So I think the script is very, very obvious for Virginia. Just do the exact same thing. Keep playing how you've been playing on offense and stop the ground game for Duke. But for the Blue Devils, in order to win this game, you just have to get the ball out of Darian Mensah's hands, in my opinion. Screens, slants, just find a way to get the ball to your playmakers in open space that doesn't involve just inside zone and chucking it deep every other play. Virginia has proven it can sustain drives on your defense, so I think you have to mix up the play calling, show them something they aren't expecting, and stay on the field. That is the biggest thing. Don't go off the field on third downs. Find a way to get the ball to Shepard and Barkate on the perimeter. Take what they give you. You don't have to hit a home run on every play. Of course, you are going to have to run the ball, but short passes in extension of the run it up the middle, and then force play action, hopefully to get your wide receivers open on the edge. That is the best path to victory for Duke. But with what I said last time, I have to trust Virginia's consistency over Duke's potential explosivity. And once again, I am taking Virginia to beat Duke 31-24. And last, for my conference championship predictions, it is number 1 Ohio State taking on number 2 Indiana, potentially the matchup of the year. Indiana is a 4.5-point favorite in Indianapolis, which means FanDuel has Ohio State winning at about 27-21. And even if these teams don't end up meeting in the playoffs, this could be the national championship game. These are probably the pound for pound best teams in college football this year. And wouldn't you know, they seem to match up perfectly with one another. They each have Heisman candidate quarterbacks, one of whom will probably end up winning the Heisman based on this very game. 2 elite wide receiver groups to help them out. Ohio State's Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, and Indiana's Omar Cooper and Elijah Surratt. They have 2 elite ground attacks, both with Ohio State's Bo Jackson and Indiana's Roman Hemby, and 2 elite defenses, both of whom rank inside the top 5 in terms of points per play. So if you weren't sold on this matchup before, there you go. The proof is in the pudding there. This should be one of the best games all year, even with the playoffs still ahead of us. And in this matchup, quarterback play will of course be very, very crucial at who wins this game. It'll be the main talking point you see coming into this game. Mendoza versus Julian Sayin. But in my mind, the defense who makes the bigger plays and who comes to play more so than the other will decide who wins this matchup. And we've seen that for both of these teams all year. For Indiana, when they played Oregon, Mendoza has a shaky game, turns the ball over, but that defense forces 2 huge turnovers to give Indiana the edge, and they of course end up beating Oregon. And for Ohio State, when they played Texas, which I know was week 1, but still probably their toughest opponent on the season, they had a tough time running the ball, and Julian Sayin of course didn't play phenomenally, but that defense forces a turnover and Ohio State ends up winning by 7. So like I said, that is the matchup of this game. Which defense performs better? Which defense potentially forces a turnover? And that doesn't necessarily mean which quarterback turns the ball over, because both of these quarterbacks could play at an elite level, each with 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, throwing it all over the field. But in the running game, forcing the wide receiver to fumble the ball or tip it into the defender's hands, maybe even a special teams turnover could decide this game. And I could even see this matchup finishing regulation at 14-14. Going into 6 overtimes with one defense needing to make a bigger stop in the 7th overtime in order to win. This matchup could even be decided by whose kicker has a better day. But ultimately, I have to trust who I believe has the better defense, who I think will be able to make that final play, and the team who's been here before, who knows exactly what they're going up against and what they need to do to prepare for this kind of matchup. And that, of course, is the reigning national champions, the undefeated Ohio State Buckeyes. Give me Ohio State to cap off the perfect regular season, finishing 13-0 and winning this matchup 27-20. And with that, thank you for watching. As always, be sure to like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Hit the other O&O Sports social media accounts to be entered into that giveaway. Literally a free chance at $100, folks. Take advantage of it. I hope you enjoy watching the conference championships this week, and I will see you in the next one.